the year 2000, you really couldn't put a child in special education for one of these, what I like to call Wall Street disorders. And I call them Wall Street disorders because the drugs that come with these diagnoses are publicly traded on Wall Street for profit. And the companies that sell these drugs are actually some of the biggest donors to the American Psychological and American Psychiatric Associations. When I tell you that psychology is a business, I need you to understand what I mean. When I tell you that special education is a business, I need you to understand what I mean. And when I tell you that ADHD is a business, I need you to understand what I mean. Now let's look at this thing called ADHD. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. In 1980, there was no ADHD. Let me back up. Well, no, that's correct. In 1980, we had ADD, Attention Deficit Disorder. Between 1980 and 1990, ADD was eliminated. There is no more ADD. So if someone tells you the child has ADD, then they don't know what they're talking about because it doesn't exist no more as a diagnosis. Now it's only ADHD, and it comes in 4 types. Primarily hyper, primarily inattentive, combined, a child is hyper and inattentive, and then the 4th category, which I don't like at all, which is ADHD NOS. NOS means not otherwise specified. That means that the child did not meet the clinical definition of ADHD, but you can legally still diagnose them with it if you think they have it. And that's a slick little category that was created to make sure that if you want the kid on drugs, they can get put on drugs. Now, I refer to ADHD as ain't no daddy at home disorder, because that's really what it is. Ain't no daddy at home disorder, ADHD. Now you say, why do you say that? Well, let's look at the statistics. At least 75% of black boys diagnosed with ADHD or conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder or disruptive behavior disorder don't have a father figure in their life. So is this really about psychiatry? Is it really about brain chemistry? Or is it really about a hustle on the backs of fatherless boys? Let's look at the year, 1980. That's when we first get this ADD phenomenon, which later became ADHD. Was it a coincidence we got it in 1980? No. That's the same year that mass incarceration took a turn for the worse. That's the same year that the CIA, Cocaine Import Agency, dropped crack off in the black community. So, in essence, they started drugging the adults at the same time they started drugging the children. And with the same type of drugs. Now, you're led to believe that the legal drugs are safer than the illegal drugs. But when you study the history of psychiatric medication, you find that all of the illegal drugs used to be legal. Every one of them was sold as a legal prescription in this country. And the companies that make the illegal drugs also make the legal drugs. And according to the Drug Enforcement Agency of America, DEA, Ritalin is classified as a Schedule II drug, which means it's in the same category. And I want you to do your research. Don't take my word. Because a lot of what you're going to hear today is the first time you're hearing it. So you may doubt it. That's okay. I want you to doubt it. Now go find out for sure. Ritalin is classified in the same category as opium and cocaine as a Schedule II drug by the DEA, which means it's one of the most addictive and one of the most dangerous. Now, people who are chemically dependent, grown people, adults who are addicted to crack and heroin, they can only afford to get high maybe once a day, maybe twice, maybe all the time for a couple of days until their money runs out. But when you're child, when you're a black boy, you don't ever have to worry about the drug running out because there's an endless supply of it. So you get to take it for breakfast, you get to take it for lunch, and you get to take it for dinner. Some of our young men are on 3 and 4 different drugs at the same time, even though they're contraindicated with each other. What do I mean? You ain't supposed to take some drugs with other drugs. Are y'all following me? But psychiatrists prescribe it anyway. So they might take a certain drug for ADHD, Ritalin. They might take Prozac for depression. They might take Risperidone for anger, a cocktail of medicines. But one of the points I want to drive home today for you all here is that this war against black boys, this psychoacademic holocaust, could not and would not happen were it not for your permission. You parents are complicit in the war against your children. When my phone rings, Dr. Umar, can you help me? My son was diagnosed as mentally retarded, and I don't think he is. Well, if you don't think Raheem was ever retarded, why did you let him get tested in the first place? If you don't think Roxanne was learning disabled, why did you let her get tested in the first place? If you don't think your grandson or foster child has ADHD, if you don't believe in drugs for children, why did you let them get tested? See, I cannot test without your permission. So, for every child in special ed who don't belong, every child diagnosed with a disruptive behavior disorder that they don't need, and every child on dangerous psychiatric medication would not be on it, would not be in the program, had not some Negro parent somewhere gave their authority over to the system. And this system of miseducation is the same system that is controlled by the same people that control the mass incarceration system. Now, isn't it interesting that only 1 out of every 4 black boys in America graduates from high school? Isn't it interesting? Only 3 out of every 100 black baby boys born in this country will ever see the inside of a college. You mean to tell me that your child is already receiving an inferior education, but you want to make it even worse than what it already is by giving them an IEP, inferior education program? Now, when you put your child in special education, people are not telling you that by the time it's almost time to graduate, he may not be functional on grade level. He may not be ready for college level work. He may not even be ready for trade school. He might not even be ready for a job. I need y'all to understand something. The state of Pennsylvania passed a mandatory graduation examination law that goes into effect in 2015. 2014 or 2015, I think it's 2015. Your child is going to be given 10 tests during the course of their high school career. They must pass 6 of the 10. I hope y'all listen. If they fail more than 4 of those 10 sets of assessments, they will not get a diploma. It doesn't matter if they were straight A's and B's. It doesn't matter if they were honor roll. It doesn't matter if they were National Junior Honor Society. If you fail that graduation test, you will not get a diploma. Now you know why Pennsylvania is building 4 new maximum security prisons right now. There's a design to this whole thing. Have you been paying attention to the immigration bill? Do you know what the immigration bill is about? Well, let me take you back in history, because everything that happens now happened before. In 1890, at the end of Reconstruction, the United States government influxed 20 million non-African immigrants. They came from Mexico, they came from East India, they came from Arabia, they came from China to work on the railroads and work in the factories as part of the booming Industrial Revolution. Now, at the time, they were bringing these black folks, these non-black folk in. There was 4 million ex-slaves who couldn't find jobs. So black people were looking for work, but couldn't find it. But the government was bringing in workers from other countries. Why are you bringing in workers? We got a bottle of water or a cup of water back there, if I could get it. Why are we bringing in workers if we got black people who can't find work? Because America made a mistake during slavery. Although slavery was a tremendous benefit, it came at a big risk. American capital rested on the backs of black people during slavery. That means black power was the foundation for white power. In freedom, the government said we can never do that again. Because if you put our economic order under the control of blacks, excuse me, my brother, if you put white power on the back of black power, if black people organize, they can shut down American capitalism. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the black worker with somebody else. Because if we bring the Chinaman to America and he gets out of line, we can send him back to China. If we bring the East Indian to America and he gets out of line, we can send him back to East India. If we bring the Mexicans to America and they get out of line, we can send them back to Mexico. But black people built this country. There's no place to send them, which is why we got to be careful. They brought those workers in to replace you. And guess what, black people? They're doing it all over again 130 years later. The entire immigration bill is about making sure we got enough people to replace the Negro once we finish locking them all up. The immigration bill is about you, and you don't even realize it. It's about making sure capitalism can continue without the Negro. You don't need jails when you got jobs. And anyone who studies criminology and sociology knows what? Whenever crime goes down, it's because jobs went up. And whenever jobs go down, crime goes up. 75 years ago, the people who were selling drugs and hustling whiskey and running rackets and breaking the law were not black. They were Irish. They were Italian. They were Jewish. They were Southern European immigrants who were not yet considered white, and as a virtue of that, were shut out of the American economic order, so they broke the law to take care of their families. Nobody said it was because they had ADHD. Nobody said it's because they had a DNA that predisposed them to kill other people. But whenever we talk about black crime, y'all let people brainwash you into thinking that our young men are out there doing what they're doing because they was born to do that. Violence takes place within the socio-economic political context. Violence takes place within the socio-economic political context. What does this have to do with school? Everything. Everything. Because in the psychoacademic war against black boys, you must first do what? Miseducate. Miseducation is key. It is primary. You must miseducate them first, and then you can psychiatrically medicate them, and then you can juvenile incarcerate them, and then he becomes psychologically frustrated, which leads to stage 5, the final chapter, premature extermination. 1 out of every 4 black men in America killed by their 35th birthday at the hands of another black male, usually trying to do what? Get their hustle on. Economics. One of the weaknesses of us as a people is that we love to celebrate our cultural history, failing to realize that part of African culture is an economic foundation. And when you look at many of our movements, some of them had no economic program, although they were great. And the ones that did have an economic program wasn't able to sustain it after the founder of the movement died off. Our weakness is economic fabric. Kwanzaa's coming up, and we're going to celebrate Kwanzaa for 7 days. But are you aware that Macy's department store makes more money off Kwanzaa than all black bookstores in America put together? Kwanzaa comes around, and in McDonald's, you got white employees wearing kente cloth to sell you cancer burgers. We're the only people who let other people exploit our culture for their capitalism. You will never see McDonald's workers walking around with Hanukkah stuff on, because it's considered a mockery. But with black folk, you can take our cultural icons and sell it. And we have to stop falling short of demanding from our leaders and organizations a solid economic program. We have to have one. If you don't put black people to work, you are not solving black problems. We can talk about a moral fiber all you want, but morals goes out the window for anyone who doesn't know what tomorrow will bring. Right now, in America, especially in Philadelphia and Chicago, public schools are being shut down. Not just here, all over the country. I just came from Los Angeles, shut them down. I just came from Jackson, Mississippi, where the mayor of the city, Attorney Chikwe Lumumba, many of you know him.